The Others on 4K Blu-ray from the Criterion collection just came out today. Actually, it's past midnight, so it came out yesterday. This is day 22 of 31 in my 31 days of horror. And I worked at the movie theater when this first came out, and I saw it in 35 millimeter. And my goodness, this movie scared me. Speaking of this movie scared me, I have a confession to make about scary movies that I will tell you at the end of this, because I think if I told you right now, you might quit. But I was very impressed with this, and I want to tell you why. So, first of all, I watched this movie on a professionally calibrated 85-inch Sony X950H with the Panasonic UB820. And right now I'm sampling it on a Sony A8H 65 inches with a Sony X700. And then on the X950H that's been professionally calibrated by Value Electronics in New York. That one, the sound system I was using on that is called the Sony HT-ST5000. So it's basically a sound bar that simulates Atmos because it has all the speakers, so it has the upward firing speakers. So it's able to feel similar to actual surround sound. Since moving, I haven't set up my all the way around everything speakers, but the soundbar simulates Atmos pretty good. Like, I've compared it. So that's the setup I was watching this on, and I was a little bit hesitant to get the movie because I found out it didn't have HDR, and I was like, well, why buy a 4K without HDR? But then I watched John's review from Movie Collector over in the UK of the studio canal version, and what he was saying about it, and I was like, oh my goodness, that seals the deal. So I went and pre-ordered the Criterion edition in the US because I was just like, wow. And also I wanted to see if this one looked as good as what John was saying. And I can say that, wow, I don't know of a 4K, and now I haven't seen all of them, but this is absolutely one of the best 4Ks that I've ever seen, as far as the image just looking like a 35 millimeter film being projected. Like, I feel like I was watching a projected film. I did not feel like I was watching a video. And the whole movie I just had in my mouth. I was just like, wow, it actually looks like a projected film. Like, you could just see the tiny little film grain the entire time just tingling. There were a few little I don't know if it's print damage or dirt specks, but there were a few that would pop up here and there. There was actually oddly some lighter specks that would pop up, and I actually compared it to the Blu-ray, and the specks pop up in the exact same places. Speaking of the Blu-ray comparison, the Blu-ray, the colors just don't look as good. I know that it's not HDR, but the 4K looked heads and shoulders better. The resolution wise, they still looked good. The 4K still had the grain looked cleaner and more resolved. The Blu-ray, it looked a little more clumpy, but it still looks really, really good. It's just the 4K is absolutely a step up. Like, the blacks looked better and deeper, and the colors just looked more correct. So the 4K is an absolute amazing picture, and I just loved all the uses of light and dark throughout the movie. It's just like a cinematographer's playground, this movie. Look at this megabits per second on this picture. It's crazy. Oh, hopefully I didn't wake my kids up with that Nicole Kidman scream. Oh my gosh. Okay, so I noticed something on this part where the new servants are approaching the house, and something that the old guy says. I'm going to turn it up a little bit. You can hear what he says. Listen.
I imagine he's dead like all the rest.
Those were the days.
You hear that? So they're laughing and talking about someone, and then you hear him say, oh, I wonder whatever became of him. And he says, oh, dead like all the rest. It's just like, okay. That's a hint right out the gate right there. Spoiler alert, if you haven't seen this movie, you should watch it. And this 4K is amazing. It'd be worth a blind buy. But we're gonna be doing spoilers here, and we're gonna just go through it like it's a book club, and it's my turn to talk, and I'm just gonna go over some stuff I noticed this time around. When these guys first
I'm Bertha Mills, ma'am.
walked in
And this is
to the
Edmund
house,
Tuttle.
this is where it just hit me that this looks like a 35mm film being projected, and I just sat there staring at it. I know I already said that, but and it's not going to show up on the phone,
Nice to meet you, Mom.
but
Must be the gardener.
I mean, look at
That's
this
right, the gardener.
beautiful
And
picture.
this young lady is called Lydia.
Have you had much experience in service?
If you want to see a scientific side-by-side 1080p to 4K comparison, there's many other channels that do that, but this is just for my eyes, and my goodness, it looks so good. Honestly, I think if you're in the US, you could just get the Criterion edition. You don't need to get the Studio Canal version, because this looks phenomenal, and it has a huge load of special features on here. And then you don't have to have the Region B Disc 2. You can just have Region A for both of them. Well, the 4K is region free, obviously, but if you imported the Studio Canal, you'd have that Region B second disc. So the Criterion, you've got both discs that should work in a non-region free player. So at the start of this movie, one thing that it does whenever they close the curtains is just like this super ominous music comes in. Listen to this. It just gets so... It's like the picture gets dark and the music gets dark. So the picture goes dark, the music gets dark, and it is... This whole movie is just like obviously we're going through the horrible, scary journey of Nicole Kidman's character dealing with all of this, but just the mood and the cinematography and the acting of these little kids, like, this movie is very underrated, and I feel like it kind of just disappeared after a while after it came out. And I remember showing this to a little Ukrainian foreign exchange student that we had staying at our house, and he was not impressed, and I was like, to me, this is one of the scariest movies I've seen, just the way it makes me feel. Obviously, it's not disturbing, and it's not, well, there's thoughts that are disturbing in it. It's not like a slasher movie, but to me, just the mood and feel of this movie are like the pinnacle of horror to me. And this little Ukrainian kid just could not get it. He's like, there's no blood in this movie. He's like, I just don't see it. And, well, Ruslan, if you're still around, I hope you've watched this again and you have a greater appreciation for it now, because this movie creeps me out. I almost like... tension almost gets so high during some of these parts where I'm just like, maybe I should turn it off and just like go get a drink or go pee or something, because it really builds, and there's a lot of like teasy, scary jump parts, but it just holds the tension and the mood for so long. So one thing that really stood out to me about this scene between these kids, where she's saying that it's Victor that opened the curtains, and he's like, it's scaring him really bad, and she's like, he's over there behind the curtains. It does like this zoom in on the curtains, and it's almost like the music is how he would feel on this part.
You're lying. Don't you tell Mummy. So I'm a liar, am I? Yes. Victor, come out from behind that curtain so I stupid
Right here.
can see you.
So it's like curious music, and then it just, as he gets freaked out, so it does this super scary music, and he gets freaked out and lays down. And so like that music is almost his perspective of his experience, because there was no reason for that music to be so shrill and scary, because nothing happened with the curtain. And so I really liked how the music tied into the feelings of this kid right here. Like it's like almost his POV music. It's a little scary right here. This girl is faking the little kid's voice now. Uh-oh. Okay. she said, Victor, touch his cheek so he knows you're real. And the camera pans over to this little guy, and this is her elbow still in frame, her right elbow. Like, it didn't leave the frame, so they very carefully kept it in frame. And then with her right elbow still in frame, wearing her cream white-ish jammies, this comes into frame. This is only 28 minutes into the movie. So, little boy's hand with like a blue sleeve with different texture, with her right elbow still in frame. Like I said, only 28 minutes in, and then of course he screams and his mom goes running up there, and it's like, oh, he just got touched in the face by a ghost or a visitor or the others, or intruders, as they say. But it's almost like the short film Jerry's Game, where there's one shot where you see 3 hands. It's the short film in front of Bug's Life. But the way, if you're not paying attention, you could be like, oh, it's just his sister. It's like, nope, that's her right elbow right there. Boop. So this movie really hits differently the more times you see it, and I think that's how you know it's a great movie. And I love this shot as she's walking around kind of the upper balcony area to go to the room where her daughter says there's visitors. But I love how the camera stays on her, and it kind of just turns as she goes around. Well, we get a scary shot of the door, but I love this shot right here coming up. Right here. So it keeps her right in the middle, and it's just turning, and you get the background going by really fast, all the way till she makes it to the door. One thing specifically between the 4K and the Blu-ray that I noticed being a difference, and it doesn't really come through on my phone, but whenever there's light on something on the 4K, it just looked a lot more natural, and like there's more like progression of the light, whereas on the Blu-ray it looked more, I don't want to say chunky because that makes it sound wrong. Like, don't get me wrong, the Blu-ray is beautiful Blu-ray. It's actually one of the better looking ones I've seen, but just when you compare it to the 4K, the shade of everything just looks better. Like, I don't know how to explain it. It looks more lifelike, more specifically when there's these bright pools of light shining on things, it just looks more resolved and delineated on the 4K, like to the point where it kind of kills the mood once you see the Blu-ray after watching this. I love this part. She's asking her about this
They're not asleep, ma'am.
album of the dead here. But she says, how could they be so superstitious? Listen to what she says.
Grief over the death of a loved one can lead people to do the strangest things.
I don't know if you could hear that, but it's grief over the death of a loved one can lead people to do the strangest things. And then she looks right at her and just is just like, that's you. And I do think that's what that is meant. She's kind of calling her out, and there's just so many cool things to notice on your second, third, fourth time through this movie. All right, wasn't going to point it out, but this Book of the Dead guy looks like freaking Guy Pearce. Maybe they got Guy Pearce to show up to be Book of the Dead photograph. The scene is actually heartbreaking, where she's explaining
Daddy went because he's very brave.
why their dad went to war.
Because he wasn't prepared to let the Germans tell him what he had to do.
He went to war because he was very brave and he wasn't prepared to let the Germans tell him what to do. And then the next scene is her crumbled up in a ball crying. And the kids just don't understand. They're like, why did he have to go to war? No one's done anything to us. And later, when she yells at her husband, spoiler alert, when he comes back, and she's like, why did you leave us? And he's just like crying. It's just like, dang. This movie has a lot of a lot of really strong notes. And it hits so much differently once you know that, like, how these people are being perceived by the others. This is one of the absolute trixiest parts in the whole movie. Now that was just naughty. This movie, it's already scary enough, and it's already moody enough. and it has enough scary parts, but there's definitely some just super cheap shots where they're like, scary, scary, scary music. Oh, it's nothing. So it's definitely not like innocent as far as just like, oh, this movie's just straightforward and scary and it never does any like horror movie gag things. It's like, yeah, it does stuff like that. And it's a little bit of a cheap trick, but it's fun. You know, after my heart calms down after that scary music. I love this.
There is something
I love this
in
line.
this house. Something diabolic. Ma'am. Something which is not at rest.
That's when she makes the decision that she needs to go see the priest and bring him out here. But for some reason, when she goes outside the house, she gets totally fogged out and lost. It's almost like, you know, the powers that be don't want her wandering off. It's very creepy. Nicole Kidman does so good in this movie. And I absolutely love the sound design on this part, where she's just totally lost in the fog. It's so perfect. It's so isolated on her. And then you start to get these steps coming out of the fog. And this is just sad. It's almost more sad. She's so happy to see him. But look, he's totally shell-shocked.
I should give you up for dead.
You say a lot of things.
She asks why it took him so long to get home, and he said he was wandering around trying to find his home, and it's just like, that's doesn't sound like a normal military discharge there. Also, randomly, I think if I heard this right, he says to her before the scene change, he says, "Sometimes I bleed." Just like, what? But then later at the house, he says to her, after the daughter fully discloses what happened, he says, "I came back to say goodbye to my wife and children." And it's just like, oh, that's really sad. And she yells at him for going to war, and he cries, and it's powerful. Right? I'm just going to say about this scene right here that this is the stuff of nightmares, and I've never forgot it since I first saw this movie 22 years ago, and I never will forget it. And that's all we're going to say, because I need to move beyond the scene, because I almost needed to take a break on this scene. So this is genuinely amazing and creepy filmmaking, and I hate and love this scene, and we're going to move on because I don't like it and it's freaking me out. Look at this shot in the stairwell as the light follows her up. Right here. How it illuminates the next part going up. My goodness. I can't handle how incredible the lighting is in this movie. It's just, like, even if you weren't even paying attention to the story, you could just stare at, like, the beautiful imagery of this thing. Check out the lamp as she goes into this bedroom. It's going to show it right in the window. Look, not her lamp, but there's a lamp in the window. Watch above it. Watch what happens. I don't know if it'll show up on here, but I've never noticed this before, and it's quite odd. I think it's meant to be a bit on the supernatural side. Right there. You see that? You can rewind it and look, but that's like, it looked like the smoke from the lamp was going back into it. Like, that is very subtle and very, like, I mean, you may not ever notice it, but I think it was showing that she's in a space that was occupied by the others. Well, this movie is creepy and beautiful and terrifying, and I love it. And it was so awesome to see it all those years ago when it came out in theaters in 35mm, and now to see it again on here looking so good. My goodness, let's see what spine number this thing is. This is Criterion spine number 1159. Is that what it says? 1195. My goodness, it's late at night. I'm tired. Okay, and now for my confession about scary movies. I'll just come out and say it. I think The Sixth Sense is the scariest movie to me. It is the movie that scares me the most. And this is probably number 2. I'd say, yeah, I can't think. I mean, there's movies that are more disturbing and more shocking, but to me, The Sixth Sense scares me the most. And this is right up there with it. So I like these kind of movies that you don't necessarily need to be grossed out or anything to be scared. I think just the creativeness of this movie to terrify you and make you think very disturbing things when you find out about her, what's going on. But yeah, I think this is an incredible movie. I couldn't be more impressed with this 4K transfer. I always said I'd rather have 1080p with HDR than 4K with not HDR. But my goodness, this just looks so good. And I went back and forth between the Blu-ray and the 4K that came in the Criterion set, and there is a marked difference between the 4K and the Blu-ray, like so significant that you just get so much more in the mood of the movie with the 4K. I was blown away. This is a great movie. I don't know how often I'll watch it. I definitely think I want to dive into all the special features, but I love showing it to people. This kind of movie's not for my wife though. She did not like the ending when it has to do with kids. That is not good for her. But this has been day 22 of 31 in my 31 days of horror. So let me know what you think of this movie, and if you are debating between Studio Canal and the Criterion or what. And if you like more stuff like this and you want to continue on with me, then subscribe. And congrats if you made it this far. Thanks for watching. Bye.